Welcome back to the VINwiki appraisal panel, where we appraise the car collections of various YouTubers and automotive influencers. And today we are doing Matt Farah of The Smoking Tire. He's always had some really cool cars, but the collection continues to build. And today we're going to talk about exactly how much it's all worth. And this content is made possible by Auto Tempest. We talk a lot about Auto Tempest, not just because they're a great supporter of VINwiki for the last 5 years, but also because it is the most powerful way to shop for your next car. They say their slogan is all the cars, one search, and that's exactly how it works. You get to find the results from every major listing site in the same place, and now in your pocket with their mobile app. So be sure to download the new Auto Tempest mobile app for Android or iOS. It gives you all the power of their desktop version, which you can continue to use right in your phone. So check them out, leave them a great review, and thank them for their support of VINwiki. And as always, I am joined by John Farah of Farah Classic and John Tamarian of Curated. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
It's great being here, and it's great being actually here
In
with you.
person.
It's really fun.
And I'm sorry I couldn't join you guys, but my wife is pregnant again, and I am helping out in every way I possibly can around the house.
I'm
Good
sure.
man.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, congratulations, John. We're
Yeah.
excited for you. Now, Matt's most recent acquisition is probably his most ridiculous. He just bought a 1991 Bentley Turbo R.
Yes.
He said it has a $241,000 MSRP, and he bought it, I guess, from a neighbor for about $20,000, which I think was a pretty good deal. But as all new Bentley owners do, he then immediately had to spend $12,000 on maintenance. They're tough cars to keep running, and they're all over the place from an asking price perspective. I would assume that the ones that they're asking 50 grand, well, they will continue to do so for the next few years. I said I think it's worth 35.
Well, I happen to be, I have like a guilty pleasure with these cars. I will admit that I have actually done countless hours of searching for one. I think it would be the coolest addition next to my Lamborghini Diablo. And I think it's just such an excessive car from the period. It was super, super fast at the time, but I'm also terrified of the potential maintenance costs and whatnot. Years ago, I bought a similar period Rolls Royce, which I thought would be super cool to own. And it was super cool for about 15 minutes of driving, and then every time something broke. So I would not recommend it for the faint of heart. I love these cars. I want to say it's worth $100,000, but it's not. My guess is it's worth the $20,000 that he paid today.
I'm totally with you, and I've dug these cars. I always thought they would make great cannonball cars. I mean, we already did the Rolls Royce, but he bought it for 20. He put 12 into it, and it's worth 19. That's what I think.
Well, we're sorry, Matt. We're also very, very proud of you. Somebody's got to carry that mantle. Now, another one of Matt's amazing cars is his 2022 718 Boxster Spider. It's got the Damon 4.5-liter engine, an amazing build, really him after his well over a decade of making YouTube content and decades in the car world, coming and saying, this is my perfect Porsche. And I love the color, I love the spec, I love everything about it, but also just how personal it is to him. I don't know exactly how much it costs to do that engine conversion, the upgrade, but I think the thing is, as it sits right now, is worth 150 grand.
I agree with you completely, Ed. I'm going to say the same. Maybe, obviously, a touch more. I think, you look at some of the recent auctions of anything that's paint to sample or anything like that, and they're just continuously doing well and commanding premiums. So I say $155,000.
I'll tell you how much these cost. It's a $54,000 option to get it all done, and it brings the car up to 565 horsepower, which is a lot for that little car. It's a great job, and I think it's a rarity, and I think you did a cool color in it, and I think I'm going to actually push it up a little bit more. I'm going to say it's 160.
Now, John, you'll be able to speak most to this one, but we all love a Countach, and Matt grew up loving Countaches, and he's bought one. He's got an 88 5,000 quattro valve car. It's got about 35,000 kilometers on it. I love it. He formed a union, the Countach Union, negotiating top salaries. Don't do the acronym, but that's why it's that But he's, rents it out occasionally for shoots. And I love that he was sort of the first influencer to get a Countach. And, we've talked about road trips together and things like that in it. But I think we're going to have to wait a little bit for that. John, you can explain the history behind that delay. But I think today the car's worth about 650 grand.
So unfortunately, Matt is in a little bit of a sticky situation. His mechanic, who had a great reputation, the same mechanic that actually had worked, I believe, on some of Jay Leno's cars, was recently arrested for fraud. And I believe he was selling a car that didn't exist or he didn't own. This is not the first time he's been in trouble. Apparently, there's a long rap sheet. There's a great Bloomberg article from Hannah Elliott, actually. And I would say, Matt's in a difficult situation right now because his car is in pieces. He has been able to get everything back. And recently on a podcast, he mentioned that he was looking for my help. We've been connected and we're talking back and forth. Here's what I would say. It's a good and bad thing. He has everything. He was already doing everything mechanically, so it's a bump in the road. I'm suggesting that maybe he sends the engine and everything back to Italy, to our friends there, to basically go through everything. And I think my opinion is once it's finished, Polo Historico certified, stamped, sealed, delivered, and the car is basically a new mechanical running car, I'm going to say just under 700,000. But obviously today in pieces, it's not, but I'm going to be more optimistic that this is just a small obstacle in the road. And unfortunately, a tough situation for any car owner, whether it's a Countach or a Fox body Ford Mustang.
Well, I'm never one to argue with either of you guys about Lamborghinis, but the car is in pieces. It has an unknown future. I wouldn't even think about more than 600,000 for it until it is all stamped and approved and finished and whatever. Because I've taken these cars apart before and I've seen what can happen when you try to reassemble them. Things can go absolutely haywire. So I'm going to reserve my price a little lower until something else happens. So I'm saying 600.
And sometimes you put them all back together and you have some extra parts
That's
for the next
true.
project.
You never know it's going to be better or worse.
Another one of Matt's childhood dream cars that he acquired fairly recently is his 328 GTS, his Ferrari. It's got about 45,000 miles on it. I know he searched far and wide to find a great example of the car. And these, certainly peaked probably, 5-6 years ago. And they've cooled off maybe a bit, but I think the car still brings about 130 grand.
Yeah, Ed, you're right. These cars have cooled off a touch. I will say his color, it's anything that's non-red today is a little bit more desirable. From the Ferrari point of view in Ferrari world, I have to just agree with you. I'll say $130,000 in that ballpark.
Yeah, these were like the final version of the 308 that came out in the 70s, and I think they finally perfected the car with this version of it. It's a great, reliable, nice Ferrari to own. I still think they're carrying value. I still think they have a lot of appeal to people of a certain age. I'm going to go a little higher at 140.
And I agree with you, honestly, John. And I think they still have a long ways to go. I mean, when you look at the price of Dinos today, Dinos are bringing world record numbers all of the time. So I agree with you, but I think today it's a little soft, but I think they have a big future.
Another car that I think we'll all agree has a really good future is the Acura NSX, and he has sort of the ultimate one, for the U.S. market at least, an '05 NSX-T. It's got 18,000 miles, and he just sold his perfect condition E46 M3 to get it. I really love an E46, so I don't know that I would have made the same decision, but he bought an excellent one, and today I think that car would do 150.
Recently a 5,000 mile example brought almost 260 or 250,000 at auction. So I'm a huge fan of these cars. Whenever somebody asks me for a reliable modern classic, I just send them straight to a Porsche 993 or an NSX, a later car. So I love them. I'm going to say a little bit more depending upon color. I think it should bring 160, 170, maybe a touch more today.
I mean, these were the Camry of supercars, right? Like they were insanely reliable, and I think that pushed them down for a long time as they didn't have some kind of exotic V12 in them or something. But they are a hop-in, drive whenever you want supercar. I mean, they're really cool. And this was the last year of production, I believe. I think they only built like 248 of them. They were all Targas. If that's what they're selling for, that's what they're selling for. I'm more with Ed at about 150 or so on it. But hey, more power to them if they keep climbing up the market like that.
Up next, we've got a car that I know is extremely personal to Matt, the Aston Martin Vanquish that was given to his father by Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren ordered the car new. It is spec'd in a very traditional silver, but with a Ralph Lauren purple label interior. Now, that doesn't mean, as much as I would love it to be purple, purple is like the highest level of Polo Ralph Lauren clothing, and they kind of provided that to the factory. They did this. At some point, it was converted by the factory to be a proper manual transmission. The single clutch sequential manual Vanquishes are rather unpleasant to drive when they have to shift, but they are also such glorious cars. I think it's one of the most beautiful cars Aston Martin ever made, and they sound so good. I absolutely love it. And I think that a car that was originally ordered by Ralph Lauren is an exceptionally valuable thing, not at all because I own one, but I think that car is worth at least $140,000.
You know what, Ed? I agree with you. We recently had Ralph Lauren's 288 GTO, and I was almost surprised to see the amount of response and excitement around that. Sometimes when you're too far in the weeds of car collecting and all these different things, you forget these iconic collectors and the value that or perceived value from enthusiasts and collectors. And his Lamborghini Countach broke a record for 5,000 S examples at the Vegas RM auction. I agree with you completely. I think it's 140, 150,000. I agree with you as well that the Vanquish, I think, is one of the most beautiful cars of a generation of cars. And I'm shocked to see that they still sell between 80, 90, 100,000. Obviously, it's the transmission issue, but this car does not have it. So I agree with you, Ed, 140,000.
I drove one of these back in the day, and it was one of those where you see the beautiful thing, and then you drive it, and you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. The transmission is dreadful. So the conversion is perfect. And you're right. You can get them for 80 grand, and the conversion is probably like 30 grand. So brings you up to 110, right? Which is what I would be at if I had to buy a manual Vanquish. And they are gorgeous in person. And I think that's peak 2000s Aston Martin for sure. But I don't know what Ralph Lauren's name is worth. If it's worth anything above 110,000, fantastic. If his name's worth 30 grand, great. But if I had to buy a manual transmission Vanquish, I'd say it's 110,000.
There you go. We loved the Car Trek 2 Vanquish, and when I say loved, we lived through it and survived with no air conditioning on the hottest day ever recorded in humanity. But now, I sold it to Freddie, he sold it to Tyler. We love a Vanquish, but I do miss that one every once in a while. But I think mine was better as a poster than as the actual car. Now, Matt has got some other weird cars, so we'll run through them rather quickly. He's got a 91 Mitsubishi Delica Star wagon. It's the low roof option with captain's chairs, and it's 53,000 kilometers. An exceptional example of a peculiar automobile. I had to look a little bit up. I don't know a lot about these things, I'll be honest, but it looked funky, weird, and has to be worth 25 grand, right?
Just because something is funky and weird doesn't mean it has value. I'm gonna throw 20,000 at it.
I think both of you being generous. This is definitely in my wheelhouse of these crazy things. I always wanted a Toyota Hi-Ace, which is a similar vehicle that these vans they never bought in the United States. This thing's cool. 84 horsepower diesel, right? Now, the key to these, at least living in California where I do, is most of them you can't register in California. If you find one with a California plate, yes, they're worth 20, 25 grand all day long because it costs like 10 grand to get them certified. But you can get these and buy them in Japan and bring them over super cheap. And the yen is really weak right now. We could go over and you can get one of these things, I'd say for like 10, 12 grand.
Well, that's not something I would argue with you about. He also has experimented with some electric cars of late. He has a Mustang Mach E. I like that I recently got an electric car just to kind of see what they're like to live with, and mine was a lot cheaper than a Mustang Mach E to own. They have depreciated like crazy, as most electric cars seem to. I said 25.
I hate this car. I think it's just a stupid complete marketing ploy from Ford, and they should be very disappointed. I'm going to say $10,000 just because I hate it so much.
I'm with you. I refuse. I'm not even going to use its name because it doesn't deserve the name it has in any way. It is a marketing ploy. Marketing people at Ford, shame on you. Shame on you forever. You are doomed to eternity for naming that car the way you did. It is not worthy of what you did. And so I'm not going to say the name. And I would make it valueless. I would put it in the ground 6 feet under, bury every single one of them for that atrocity. But if you had to buy one at the market, if you're some guy who needs an electric car and you're a Ford head, sure, they're probably 25, 30 grand to go pick one up. But don't you dare.
And I'm sure that's his attitude to some
Yeah,
extent as well. But a worthwhile exercise and experiment. Another interesting experiment. He has a Nissan Pal.
Yeah.
He told me that it was mint, rust-free, and has low kilometers with some special Watanabe wheels. Which, again, a weird imported car. I said 25 again. I don't know how wrong I could be, but I don't know anything about it.
Just because I like Matt, I'm gonna throw out 30,000, but I have no idea what this thing is worth.
You guys are out of your minds.
Probably so. So tell it, educate us, John.
So, I mean, these cars are really cool and everything, but in Japan, they're valueless, okay? And getting them over here doesn't cost that much money. Again, the yen is really weak. You could go get one. I mean, really, like $6,000 or $7,000 you can get these K cars for. So I think I'm being generous and saying like, again, 10 or 12 for one of these things. But I mean, they're really cool. I don't see how he fits in it. But maybe, he wears it like a suit. I don't know. They're tiny little cars. They're adorable. Yeah.
Matt is also a fan of vehicles of the two-wheeled variety. He's got a couple of interesting ones. He's got a 2020 Vespa GTS 300 Turbo and a 1983 Honda CX500 Turbo. Both super cool, super fun to scoot around in. I'm sure that fits the California lifestyle very, very well for him. I said 6 for the Vespa and 7 for the Honda.
I think there's always a buyer between $5,000 and $6,000. I'm going to say 5 and 5 for each.
I'll agree with John on this. I mean, you can find the CX500s. I love these. They're one of the turbo motorcycles from the 80s, which were super cool and probably the most successful turbo bike of that era. They built a CX650, which was a really cool improvement. And every manufacturer tried a turbo at that point because turbo was the 80s. And I've ridden one of these bikes, and they're fantastic except for the 1980s brakes. But you can find them and buy them for about $5,000, and the Vespa's probably about the same.
Super cool. An amazing, eclectic, and certainly enthusiastic collection of cars. Well done, Matt. I know in all the years of making amazing automotive YouTube content, I'm sure like all of us, we never dreamt of having the cars that we now somehow get to walk out into a garage and see. My total comes to just over $1.3 million for the car collection. And fortunately, because of the timing and when he's bought them, I know he has a lot less than that in them. So well done, Matt. That's an awesome lineup of cars.
I agree. Well done, Matt. Congratulations. I think your passion is infectious. You've done a great job for the car community. And I would say my number's a little bit higher than 1.3, but don't worry, we will help you out with the Countach.
It's always nice to have somebody like John you could just call up and help you with your Countach. I mean, that's wonderful.
The bat phone.
Yes. The Lamborghini phone. But yeah, congrats, Matt. I've watched you for years. You bring a lot to the community and the cars and the passion, and you have a great eclectic setup there in your garage. And then for me, that means a lot. I love eclectic sets. And I'm sorry, but I came in just a little lower than Ed, but I mean, you're ranging over the $1 million mark. You're doing beautifully. Well done.
So once again, thank you to Auto Tempest for supporting this content here on VINwiki. Be sure to check them out at the link in the description below. Use your desktop, use your phone, leave them a great review. I know you'll love it as much as we do, and we'll be back soon with another VINwiki appraisal.